Hello and welcome back to the FPL Yellow Army YouTube channel, and it's a very special one today. I'm joined by FPL apprentices Tom. Tom, how are you doing first of all?
Yeah, very good. Glad to be on. Looking forward to today.
Yeah, so today we're going to basically look back at FPL 2022-23. It was a pretty bonkers season in many respects, with the World Cup wedged in between, and a lot of people having captaincy regrets, not going for Haaland all season, things like that. But what I thought we'd do in today's video is just kind of analyse each of our seasons, and of course, congratulations for winning the FPL Yellow Army's Loyal Legion mini league. I mean, obviously, it's the first time I've run it in that format. I ran a mini league previously, but it was great to see a great amount of people joining it this year. And when I saw you were joining it, I was like, oh, that should be great. I've always the recent seasons been up against you in some Instagram leagues and things like that. So it's great to see you join. And yeah, it's great that you joined as FPL apprentices, who is this joint team with your mate Chris. Could you kind of talk a little bit more about how you got that going, really?
Yeah, so sadly Chris couldn't be with us today, but
Yeah.
he told me, he said you got to hold the fort for FPL apprentices. So we started a podcast about 3.5 years ago. We haven't been able to do it as much this year because of commitments with uni, but we had the podcast, I think about season 2. We were like, oh, let's just do a joint team. So we're both avid FPL lovers. And we were like, what can we do to be different to other people? And we thought, well, we've got our own team, so why don't we put our minds together? We're both very good at it. We both know a lot about football. And we were like, well, if we come together, it could either go horribly wrong or really well. And I think this was our second season. Obviously, as you said, won your league, which we're very, very buzzing about. I think we finished about 11.5k, so just missed out on the top 10k mark, but very happy. But yeah, no, it was just something we thought we'd trial, and I mean, it's worked really well, as you can tell. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a great laugh and great fun for sure.
Yeah, no, it sounds brilliant, and I've listened to a few of your podcasts earlier on in the season. They're really fun because your system of having those predictions ahead of the games to kind of help guide your FPL decisions, because often you hear a lot of podcasts on FPL and they're very stats based, and it's kind of like it gives you the stats and it doesn't necessarily give you what the answers are that clearly, but predictions can help to kind of govern what you think will happen, and ultimately that's what we're doing, right? We're predicting the future in this game. So no, it's really, really engaging, and if you haven't already checked it out, guys, feel free to have a look on Spotify for sure. Interestingly, it's a bit of a segue actually. Recently, I've just started to do a podcast myself, so I'm actually going to be doing a podcast in September, and funny enough, with another mate called Chris. So one of my uni mates. So we're basically doing a podcast, and a bit like what you said about your podcast and trying to find that niche, because it's really hard. There's so many football related, FPL related podcasts out there, and trying to make that difference. But yeah, we'll be covering kind of a mix between football and then FPL based on if it's a big game week coming up or whatever. And he's actually a Chelsea fan, so basically we've got shared experiences with managers coming in and out and all that nonsense. And I see that you're a Tottenham fan as well. Could you give a little debrief on how you became a Spurs fan and how long you've been supporting them?
Yeah, so it's actually run in the family. So my dad, my granddad, my uncle, all Spurs fans. So I've been so I'm 19, so really since I was really young. Obviously been a rough few years, but signing the likes of James Maddison, he'll be in my FPL team come game week 1 for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's an interesting one. Like when we appoint, I can't pronounce his name, you're gonna have to help me out, Roberto.
Is it Postecoglou, I think?
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, I was like, ooh, okay. Like, obviously managed in Scotland, that sort of thing. But I'm really excited now. I've watched some analysis on him, seen the football he plays, and we're actually signing some players. So yeah, it's been a rough few seasons, but it can only go up from here. And I'm looking forward to the season ahead. And I think every week everyone will be talking about having triple Tottenham in their FPL teams. Fingers crossed.
Well, maybe. I mean, I suppose a key part of that will be if Harry Kane decides to stay, which, to be honest, I've always thought, as much as he'll maybe want to leave, I think I just don't see it realistically happening. I don't think Daniel Levy will allow it to happen, really. But yeah, no, it should be very interesting. As you mentioned, Maddison, a fantastic FPL option last season in a really struggling Leicester side, and to get into that Tottenham team, and if he's on set pieces and supplying Harry Kane, you feel like that will be, maybe the next Christian Eriksen in that kind of number 8, number 10 role. So yeah, it should be really exciting for FPL and for football in general.
100%. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to watching some nice football for once.
Yeah, you talk about nice football. I can't relate at the moment as a Watford fan. It's been pretty awful. Basically, for the last 3 or 4 seasons, we've had a lot of off the pitch problems with our owners, but also just on the pitch, the players just not bad. Just a bit of a bad atmosphere, and they've lost the dressing room sort of thing. And there's a lack of passion. So yeah, it needs to change around this season. We've got in Valérien Ismail, the ex-Barnsley manager. So it's kind of one of those things. We've had so many managers come and go that we feel kind of numb with each new appointment. We're like, it could just all happen again. But fingers crossed this is the season it turns around and we get promoted. But yeah, I'm not too optimistic about the season. Yeah, no,
I've looked at the Championship. It's a tough lineup this year. There's no easy teams in the league this year. Very, very tough, it looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Very competitive.
Yeah, for sure. And the Championship's always that way. It's just Watford have recently just looked like a team that, unless we get a takeover, unless the owners get dumped out, which under our financial position is just not likely, where we've got some, big deficits, some big financial problems, and yet we're transferring out and transferring back in players to kind of balance the books. So yeah, it's a bit worrying, but we'll park that to the side and focus on FPL today. Trying to keep focusing on the things that make us happy as a Watford fan. But yeah, no, we'll start off really with FPL apprentices and your season really, because yeah, fantastic season, finishing in that top 12k. And ultimately, the gap in points was fairly, comfortable in the end over me. So fair play to you. But yeah, what I've just kind of got to start us off is I had a look at some of the data. So this is taken from a great website called anoopla.net, looking at kind of the game week data and just looking at your season. So hopefully, guys, you should see this on the stream. So we've looked at across the season. So he started off the season with a 49 pointer in game week 1. It's kind of middle of the road there. Haaland, obviously, a lot of people brought in Haaland. Funnily enough, not many people captained him at home to away to West Ham. But so then a lot of people went for Salah, and as did your team. And then just kind of looking at some of the highlights of that season, I think a lot of people had a rough game week 6, didn't they? Because that was the week just before the games got cancelled because of the death of the Queen Elizabeth II. So yeah, it was a rough one for me. I'm going to go talk about that in a bit, because that was one of my lowest scoring game weeks of the season, game week 6. But yes, interesting that as well. 49 for you, and then looking at kind of big points in the season. I mean, a lot of people wild carded around game week 8, game week 9. And I see there, game week 9, a really good score of 90 points. So that was perhaps. Did you feel that was a bit of a turning point for your season?
I think so. Yeah, like when you're seeing a score like that, you're thinking, all right, okay, maybe we can start knuckling down. Looking in a good position, starting to crack on, and look at the likes of Maddison that game week as well. So yeah, no, definitely, 100%.
Yeah, and just looking ahead, it's interesting to see how well people did in that first game back after the World Cup, because a lot of people, it's almost like you think, oh, there's too many changes and it's going to play with your head and you're going to make some mistakes in taking out players that might do well post-World Cup. But a lot of people had very good weeks in game week 17. So you scored 93, very, very good, strong for the FPL Apprentices team. And it was a crazy one, because myself, actually, I had 98 that week. And it's just one of those things. For a single game week, you don't expect to get near the hundreds. And I think it was one of the few occasions I think I had all my attackers score in that one game week. And yeah, I don't think I'll probably ever have that again. It's just one of those crazy things. But it's funny how much people's form change. You think about Almiron, who had that fantastic purple patch pre-World Cup, and then scored that goal, I think, against Leicester, and then just kind of really trailed off after that. And I was one that didn't own Almiron, so that was a real painful one. I only had him for that one goal against Leicester. But did you own Almiron, and was that a similar thing for you? We
didn't. Yeah, no, I don't. We weren't on the Almiron train either. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think we may have hopped on him around nearly when he died out, near similar to you.
Yeah.
And we saw he's one of those players. It was like I think it was Gundogan the season before.
Yeah.
When they're going through these spells, it's like, do you hop on? Have you missed the hauls? Is he going to keep going? And they're tough ones. Like if you have them from the start, fair play. But they're hard to know. Like can it could never last forever.
Yeah.
It's always hard to know. Like, do you hop on now? When to hop? So yeah, no. So they were hard ones, but fair play to him. Like I mean, he was a different man this season.
It's crazy.
Obviously died down a bit, but yeah, I was so impressed with him. Class, really impressed.
Yeah, really, it's incredible. You know where he was last season as an FPL asset. I mean, obviously he did die off a little bit, and it was a kind of short spell. But just during that spell, how he just turned into a complete different player. And you look at a few players like that this season who've had such big seasons compared to last season, like Marcus Rashford, who obviously made a mockery of that price tag at 6.5 million, but still, Martinelli as well, 6 million. You know, he did quite well last season, Martinelli, but he often had a few bench appearances and a few rotations, but he was one to watch definitely last season. So yeah, it's incredible to see these players just kind of having big campaigns. I was also going to touch on your kind of double game week period really around game week 19 and 20, because it's quite interesting to see. You went for a Rashford captaincy in the week that a lot of people went for Mitrovic. Was there any kind of thinking about the yellow card situation back then, and you didn't want to go for that?
Yeah, no, I think so. And so we did own Mitrovic, and we knew at the time that it was a risk. With lots of people captaining and that sort of thing. We had Pereira, but I think that was in the back of our mind. And yeah, it was. I think at the time we were like, "Oh, this could be a big risk." Like those sort of decisions can change your season.
Yeah.
And we decided not to go for him. Obviously, in the end, it didn't really matter. He got the goal, but that was about it. And Rashford got 16 points as captain, so it didn't really matter. But they're hard decisions to make, and me and Chris like going against what most people do. We sort of like taking little punts, not copying everyone else. I mean, it was harder this season, as we'll go on touch on to with like Haaland, like trying to go against Haaland captaincy for a lot of the season.
Yeah.
But when we can, we do like to try and go a bit different, because it just sort of makes it a bit fun, and we like to take that risk.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work. It doesn't always pay off at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a really difficult kind of thing to manage, whether you go for that glory of getting the differential captaincy and you look like a genius, but then there's that effective ownership that comes in that can really be a killer. Even if you've captained Haaland, some people, if they've triple captained him, the effective ownership makes you not actually get much gain from Haaland. So it's a real tricky one. I think because of how engaged managers have been the last few seasons, 11 million players in the game now, it's bigger than it's ever been. So that means that there's just so many players playing the game, and it's really hard to get away with these high ownership players. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember at the time thinking, when Haaland came into the league, that was the only guy I was going to triple captain. I couldn't see a world in which I didn't triple captain him, because even in one game he was scoring hat tricks, and what 2 games could do for him, we were just dreaming at that point. But it's crazy that at that point in the season, out of nowhere, out came Marcus Rashford, and really post World Cup, I think the World Cup did so much good for him. And, to the point where Haaland has those 2 double game weeks, and you think, there's the tempting one to triple captain there. And a lot of people got burnt by it, really, in game week 20, when I think he had Tottenham and Man United. You look on paper and you think, that's probably still a good enough fixture, because Haaland can score in these big games. But it was a real disappointing return in the end. And then the big game week, of course, for a lot of people, was that game week 22. And I saw that you went for the Rashford triple captain. So yeah, just kind of, what were your thoughts on that? I mean, I did the same. I was so relieved when that 60 points came in, but it was always tricky, I think, because you look at Rashford and you think, he's a great player, but will the form keep up? When Haaland's lurking. Yeah,
I know, and that was the thing, and it was a tough decision. And I think me and Chris came together and thought, like Rashford was at the time it started to pick up his form, and I think when a player like Rashford gets on form, he's pacey, he's good at dribbling, he's good at finishing, and those type of players, they have their streaky periods. And to be fair to Rashford, he did keep out. He obviously got his injury near the end of the season.
Yeah.
But we both came together and were like, 2 good fixtures. You know what? Let's just go for it.
Yeah.
Why not? He's doing well, and it paid off. I mean, 60 points on the triple captain. You can't ask for much more. And I must say, like, fair play to Rashford. He's revived his career at United. He's revived himself, and it was interesting. Obviously, they parted ways with Ronaldo. Interesting decision. Ten Hag's come in, and that's if he wants to do it looks like it's worked out. And I was always waiting for, they had Weghorst come in, but there was times where Rashford was playing off the left or up front. You look at it like, check him up front, get the ball in over the top for him, and I mean, fair play to him. He's obviously worked really hard, and I think we'll see in a few hours what his price is, but it's going to come in at a high price this season. I think he's going to be a high price midfielder.
Absolutely,
sure.
Yeah. He's in that kind of bracket of players that felt really underpriced last season, but it was fair enough because I think FPL always based the prices on the previous season, and in 21-22 Rashford did have a really bad campaign. So that's a great triple captain pick, and 112 points, in a game week like that is always nice. I think I scored quite a high points, but not as much of that really. So yeah, fair play to you. We also had an interesting period around game week 24-25 where there was quite a few blanks and doubles really, particularly in game week 25 because I remember that a lot of people went for the Salah versus Saka captaincy debate, and a lot of people went for the Salah captain, and he did score I think in one of the games, but Saka was a fantastic captaincy by your guys. So yeah, what was kind of the thinking with that? Because obviously it's always easy with captaincy to look back at previous seasons and think, Salah's always done it in FPL. He's such a great asset. So then, what made you? Can you remember what the thought process was with Saka going there?
I think this one was credit to Chris. To be fair, I think I was sort of more on the fence of it. Again, obviously as a Spurs fan, I'd hate Arsenal, all that sort of thing. So it's hard to put your bias aside. And I think Chris was pretty set on Saka, and he was like, we got to go for him. Leicester away, where, to be fair, he didn't do anything at Leicester away. So that was the fixture, looking at it like, okay, that's where the points should come.
Yeah.
And then obviously Arsenal at the Emirates, and again, I hate to say it, and I'm happy because obviously they bottled the league, but they were a fortress at the Emirates for a lot of time through the season, and playing Everton. Yeah. And that's where Saka really stepped up. And, and obviously, look, Liverpool had Wolves at home. Wolves are a weird side, aren't they? Like they're a side that like you can always expect to be near down the bottom. You never really know what to get out of them. They had that one good season under Nuno, or 1 or 2 good seasons. Yeah. And then it's sort of died off. And I think looking at it on paper, you've got Palace away, and Wolves at home, or Everton at home, where Arsenal are in good form, and Leicester away. And I think we looked at it, and Chris was like, "Look, Saka's got the better fixtures. Let's just go with it." So fair play to Chris. Fair play to him, and it paid off. It's another big captaincy score.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic stuff. And game week 26 as well. I think this was a big moment because a lot of people, maybe it was just being influenced by the FPL Twitter community or something, but a lot of people hit that wildcard button. I was included in that, and I do regret not delaying it a week. But that's exactly what you did, and fair play for having the kind of balls to, as you say, you said you like to often go against the crowd, and it was a week where I think a lot of people, it looked right, it just felt right to wildcard in 26 because the fixtures were swinging. You had teams like Leicester away to Southampton, a nice fixture. You had that nice fixture for Brighton at home to West Ham. You had some good assets coming through at that point, and then on the other hand, players like Salah, players were slightly disappointing in that, for instance, that Liverpool double game week in 24, I think 25 actually, Darwin Núñez I think was quite disappointing. He got injured, I seem to remember. So those kind of things, everyone thinks, just rage transfer out these players. I think Tarkowski was one of them. Like, he had a terrible double game week 25, and you're like, why have I got an Everton defender in my team? I've got a wild card out of this. But I think it was a bit of an emotional decision in that respect. So maybe people should have looked at the fixtures and thought, I mean, at the time Manchester United were in a fantastic run of form, so I think taking out Salah was not a stupid decision, but it's always painful when it goes that way and that far in Liverpool's favour. 7-0, incredible, one of those FPL folk moments. You look back at last season with the Havertz against Norwich and the Salah against Man United, and it was an amazing haul against Man United again. What were your thoughts? I mean, you as I see here, went for Saka as the captain, but a lot of people did because I think he had that Bournemouth game. So yeah, it's a really hard one to call that.
Yeah, so I think our thinking around them was, so we held off the wild card. I think part of that again was down to we wanted to keep the triple Arsenal for Bournemouth, and then we were thinking of getting rid of them and then hopping on. I think in game week 27 we brought in like Fernandes and we sold all our Arsenal. So we thought we can't wildcard in game week 26 and sell the Arsenal players before they play Bournemouth. I mean, we got very unlucky. Partey, White, and Nelson scoring. Like, who's going to predict that?
Yeah.
So I mean, we did own White to be fair, but obviously Bournemouth still got 2 goals, so we got unlucky there. But I mean, we had Salah vice captain, but 7-0 against United. Like, who's going to predict that? I mean, I don't think anyone would have seen that coming. I mean, if anyone captained Salah that week, fair play.
Incredible,
but, yeah. It's, like you said, it's one of those moments in the season that you're just like, fair play.
Yeah, variance kicking in, I think, for sure.
Yeah, no.
I just
100%.
remember watching that game, thinking like, am I actually watching this? Like, is my FPL team just out to get me? Like, this is crazy. So yeah, it was one of those crazy moments. And then of course we had that interesting period around 28, 29 where Haaland, of course, who we'd relied on for so long, then gets injured, and we kind of, as an FPL community, were very clear about what we were doing. Everyone was like, okay, it's fine, I'll just sell Haaland, as if it was such an easy thing to do, when of course when this guy's ripping up the league, it's much more difficult than that. But fair play, it was a big swing as well, this one, because I saw a few people go for Havertz, and then a lot of people went for Watkins. And Watkins, over this period, I mean, he was unbelievable, really, wasn't he? So yeah, game week 28 I think was a lot of people's time to bring in Watkins, and I think he did kind of do something, but it wasn't a great game week in general, because he wasn't as good as he was later on. And I think that was the week that everyone brought Chilwell on as well, I seem to remember, because I remember just the pain of Chilwell. I think it was a home game he had against Everton, and he just conceded after like the last few seconds of the game, and it was just, why am I bringing in Chilwell?
We had him captain. Did
you? Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I've just seen that now. Yeah, that's just, you look at that and think, great fixture, Everton at home, why not? But I've always had problems with captain defenders in the past. Like I've done it. I think I've done it twice in my FPL career. One of them was a double game week, like I think 2021 season was I think Ruben Diaz. He had like Man United and Southampton in a double game week, and he conceded in both or something. And then I think he ended up getting the same total across 2 games, 2 after the captaincy. So he only got 1, and then or maybe it was actually 2 and then 4 for the captain. But to only get 2, 1 point in each game in a double game week is just like, it's always painful. So yeah, fair play for going for that. And then the next game week was the big one, was it? Really, the biggest double game week of the season. A lot of people played their bench boosts this week. I was included in that. And 133 points. I mean, that's fantastic. And that Rashford captaincy, 24 points. Well done. That's really well done.
I think again another thing with Rashford as well. Like, we'd had the triple captaincy, and we started to back him, and like once players start performing and doing well for you, you've got to back them, and that's what we do. And I mean, in that game week, the likes of Watkins, Tony, Matoma, we had Matoma and McAllister, Trippier, even Raya, Chilwell, 9 points. He actually performed for once. I think that must have been the only time he returned.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I mean, crazy. How many points did you get that week?
Yeah, that was a big week for me as well, actually. It ended up being the highest scoring game week of my season, and actually I think the highest of my career as an FPL manager, because that week I also did play the bench boost, and I got 143. So yeah, it was a big week for me. It was kind of the season defining moment when I went for the Rashford captain as well, and I just look at that team, and the bench boost was not ideal. Like it's been better in previous seasons, because I remember that Saka injury like really early on. I think he had that Leeds game, and that was a real bummer, because seeing him on my bench boost and then not even starting the game and coming on for a 1-pointer is never nice. But then of course I think Kane scored against Everton, so there was kind of like small points on my bench. I think I ended up getting 23 in the end, which to be honest I'll take, considering it looked quite bad at one point in the game week. But I just remember so well that game week was really the game week where Watkins was like, "I'm here. Like this is the time to own me." With I think he scored against Chelsea, he scored against Leicester as well. So it was it was a big game week for a lot of people, a season defining moment really. And yeah, it was my best game week rank was this game week of 57k. So yeah, I think ultimately, this was the game week that a lot of people just shot up the ranks if they were having a tricky season. I think that's just a lesson for FPL. You could be having a tough season, but then when these doubles come around, it can really change your fortunes.
Yeah, no, and as it's always talked about in the community, like the doubles and blank game weeks do define your season. You can be having a terrible season up to then, and you can jump a couple 100k.
Yeah,
it's all about planning for them. When do you use your free hit? When do you use your bench boost? When do you use your triple captain? And I mean, to be fair, like this season it worked out quite well for us, but other seasons it doesn't. You'll mess up your triple captain. You'll get injured. Like was it Mane one year? I think came off injured in like the first 20 minutes or something. A lot of people triple captained him. So it's so hard, and they do change your season. And sometimes you have to have a bit of luck. Sometimes it is good planning, but sometimes things have to fall in place. And they are great fun. They're my favourite parts of the season. The double and blank game weeks.
Yeah, I've just seen as well. I'm afraid about this, but I've just realised that my Zoom, I haven't got the upgraded version, so it seems to be that we only have 9 minutes left on the Zoom. So what I might do is I will basically invite you back if that's okay, and just kind of
that's fine.
Keep the recording going, just so that we can actually film as much as we like, really. So yeah, I'll do that once it runs out. So if it cuts out at any point, then that will be why. So yeah, just going back to that, what we were talking about. So yeah, then it was a really weird kind of period in the season where we talked about Haaland being out injured, and then a lot of people had this plan to get him back in game week 30. And I seem to remember that he had a really good fix, I think, with Southampton away. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, I can go a few weeks without bringing him back in. Like we can get him by game week 32, game week 33." And it's crazy, really, that people doubted him. Even coming back from injury with that nice fixture, and he had an amazing haul, I think, against Southampton. So I saw that you had quite a low scoring week in game week 30. Was that mainly due to the Rashford captaincy and going against Haaland? You talked about earlier on that you felt you wanted to be different, but in that week it was quite a painful one. Yeah,
no, it was, and it backfired not getting Haaland in. I think we would have struggled to get him in with where our team was at, and it was at that point we were like, "Oh, like is this?" We had a 10 million game week rank, and we were like, "Have we thrown it? Like, is this the season over? Have we thrown it?" And we were slightly worried. I think I remember me and Chris having a conversation like, "Okay, like we've used our bench boost, we used our free hit, we used our triple captain. You have a game week like that, and you're like, oh," but we got him in the week after, captained him 24 points, and and it just went up from there. And it's those risks you take, and it's sometimes maybe it's not stubbornness, but it's like, say you missed the Haaland haul, some people will be like, well, I've missed it now, like why would I bring him in? But we were like, right, we missed the haul, get on him now, like he's the man, why are we down him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's the thing with FPL. I think sometimes you try and correct a decision in a future game week by saying, okay, now we have to go all guns blazing. Sometimes it can go the opposite way, though. You kind of make a decision just in spite of the previous mistakes you've made, and it can sometimes even backfire. But with Haaland, like, if you take a hit for him, it's probably going to be worth it in the end, because he'll pay you back with the points. So that was a good decision to bring him in, and a big game week 31 for him. And then I was just kind of talk about the double game weeks to leave the season. Game week 34 was a big one, I think, for a lot of people, because it was a week that we saw some people doing free hits, some people doing wild cards. If they'd left it that late, I mean, fair play to having the patience to do that. But I seem to remember that game week 34 was a week where it was just generally quite a high scoring week all round, and I had a pretty struggling game week 32 free hit, and I just thought, I've got to go for this and bring in all these players at double. And this was actually the week that Salah was really impressive. For so long we were talking about Haaland, he's the one to go for, and he's letting us down, but he actually outscored Haaland, Salah this week, and it was I don't think a lot of people saw it coming. You saw that double game week for City, and you think, I have to captain Haaland. But if you went for a Salah captaincy this week, then fair play. And And it was an amazing week as well for the Brighton midfielders. Amazing in two ways, really, because a lot of people had at this point committed to one of the two Brighton midfielders. I seem to remember there was McAllister, Mitoma, March. Some people might have even had Pascal Gross. And I was one actually that went for Mitoma and McAllister and just stuck with it because I was like, I can't be bothered to switch between them. And their first game, they had that Wolves home game, and I remember just thinking, right, this is going to be so many points. I'm looking forward to this. And then we got done by the De Zerbi roulette, and it was so brutal. Was the situation for you similar? Because I think a lot of people didn't have any players playing in that Wolves game.
Yeah, so we had McAllister, Matoma, but we did have Estupiñán.
Yeah,
however you say his name. So that was sort of what saved us. But God, winning 6-0 and then you get no returns from your midfielders. We were like, oh my word. They were that De Zerbi roulette was getting on my nerves by the end of the season. I mean, first of all, class manager. What a team Brighton are. They're great to watch. I love watching them, but what was he playing? What was he playing at with all that rotation? Yeah. It killed me. Absolutely killed me.
It was a real killer. Yeah. No, absolutely.
But,
it was one of those weird weeks because there was that massive low of the Brighton players, and then I think they had Man United in the second part of that double game week, and it's a big swing there because if you own March and Mitoma, and then McAllister gets that penalty in the dying embers of the game, and honestly, that's probably one of my highlights of the season. You know, I own McAllister, and I actually, you know, a lot of people in my mini leagues just didn't bring him in because of the fact I owned him. And that's always nice when you've got that kind of differential, not just differential in terms of your rank, but in your mini leagues. And I was so happy after that penalty went in. I just remember that so well. It was a good game week for you that week. You know, a nice score of 126 there for you. I scored similar, 125. And then we really moved to the big game week, that other double game week, which is going to be famous now, I think, for the Isaac versus Wilson debate. What were your kind of thoughts on this? Did you own either one of them, and were you ever thinking about bringing in the other and that kind of thing?
So this is interesting. So we captain Wilson,
right?
Which is why we're at the rank we're at. Now, there's a funny story of Wilson. He's a sort of, if people that would have listened to the pod at the start when we first started, I've got Wilson on my wall. So I've got a framed picture of Wilson because I can't remember what season it was. It was 2 seasons ago, and I had him in, and he was just scoring week in, week out. And me and Chris, I was like to Chris, all right, I'm just going to get a framed picture and let's introduce it, like sort of like the Wall of Fame. I think Az has it.
Yeah,
FPL Az, he has.
And I think let's talk FPL. Let's talk FPL as well. Yeah.
So I've always loved Wilson, and it came together at 36. We were like, we both just picked at the phone. We're like, we can't go without Wilson, can we? Like, imagine we went without him.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, Wilson's a class player. Obviously, the problem with him is he's injured a lot. Yeah. When he's not injured, he picks up so many points. Like, his points per 90, or his goals per 90 must be insane. And we got, I don't know if you'd say it's lucky or whatever, but it worked out. And that 48 points, oh my, what a swing.
Yeah.
And like that captaincy has got to be like, I think one of the best moments of the season, like Captain Wilson, because 142 game week rank, and that was when we really shot up.
Yeah, that was a big point in your season, because I'm just looking on here about, you know, where that kind of changed your ranks. So if we just look at your game week history, it's really interesting to see actually, you know, the progression throughout the season, because you look at those last kind of 6 game weeks and all green arrows, really big moments, and then you jump from 47k to 20k in one game week, and you know that was the one, really, wasn't it, to try and secure that top 12k, and really big bold decision, fair play. I was one that, unfortunately for me, I'd always done this thing where I'm like, if I'm going to stick to a double game week team, I'm going to make the transfers early and just not change it, because I just hate flip-flopping between them. But it was at my demise, because I'd already doubled up on the Botman and Trippier defence. And I was like, okay, well, I've got Isak. You know, surely I can't take a -4 just to get Wilson in. It's not going to be worth it. But I really wish I did. I really wish I just switched out Botman, because Botman was one of those players that everyone says, oh, Newcastle, one of the best defences. You've got to own a doubled Newcastle. But Botman for me was so frustrating. Like, he never got points when I wanted him to, and he always like got the odd assist, the odd bonus point here when he was on my bench. It was just it was a nightmare, really. But fair play. That's a fantastic moment for you. And then we just kind of end the season with that Game week 7, 37, 71 points. Again, another strong week. And then finally 66 in the final game week. And I see that you went for your Tottenham bias with Harry Kane captaincy on the final day.
That was all me, that one. I was like to Chris, I was like, look,
yeah.
Tottenham couldn't really get Europe, but I was like, away at Leeds, that Kane loves a last day of the season. I was like, so we have to captain him.
Nah, fair play.
And Chris, he'd give me credit if he was on here. I don't know who did you end up?
I went for Kane as well. Just to let you know, the Zoom is just coming towards the end, but I'll come back and log you back in once it's run out. But we can talk more game week 38 in the second part of it. All right.
Perfect.
I'll just basically let it finish because. Sorry about that, guys. Just because I'm not part of a elite Zoom account, but we can not worry about that. Right, so just bear with me, people. Bear with me as I get this second part of the stream over and on its way. So just ignore this for a second whilst I quickly send him the link. Bear with. Just let me see if I can quickly get to send it. Yeah, there you go. All sent. So hopefully now he should be able to join and we should be good to go. Hi mate, good to go?
Yeah, ready, let's do this.
Awesome. So so as we were saying, game week 38 was for me it was the most stressful game week of the season. I think it often is for most people. Stressful but also most entertaining because, I think the experience of watching all the games at the same time and, getting the updates and all that thing, it was a bit disappointing in my opinion this season because I guess coming from last season, which was quite hard to top on the final day, we had the relegation battle, the City-Liverpool title race in, Gundogan turning it around. I think ultimately our expectations were a bit higher than that because of that. But it felt like a lot of things were wrapped up before the final day. I mean, we had obviously, already relegated in bottom place Southampton. We had, City already wrapping up the league title. And most of the Champions League places were pretty much locked in as well. So, yeah, it was just one of those things. It was down to that last relegation place. But the thing for me was, what are your thoughts on this season? It's been a big topic of debate, really, which is the FPL team leagues, because you see so many accounts sharing the in the know knowledge, and you see other accounts trying to give fake team news and that kind of thing. But it feels for me this season more than any has been about, there's been these Instagram posts with sometimes even dodgy noises on them, but just generally like these accounts that basically take as much time as you want to tell you the answers, and then eventually everyone shares it with them and gets the inside info. But it's often like 3 minutes before deadline, so the game has crashed a few times and people have sometimes not made their transfers in time. So do you think, I've seen a few people say, if you get this team news, it's cheating because not many people have the same, access, and due to time zones, they might not be able to make the changes last minute. What are your thoughts just generally on the team leagues?
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. I think I'll have a little talk. So this year, I've tried to lock my team in the night before, because the years before I've stressed so much by the deadline of these team leagues. Game week 38, that didn't happen. I was sitting there stressing, all those, you would have seen them, all those City team leagues come out.
Yeah.
Haaland's not playing, this player's not playing. And he was I was really stressed, and I was messaging Chris, and he wasn't replying because I think he was with his girlfriend. So I was calling him like, Chris, like, I've got this news. Like, what do we do? But it's a tough one because I always think that, like, at the end of the day, like, people like us, like you, like all the people in the FPL community, if they're going to spend their time like being on Twitter, being active, I think that's the reward of taking it more seriously. And I think, obviously, like, there's a few people you can trust with the in the nose, and I don't mind it. Like, if a team news gets leaked, and we've seen it because we've been on Twitter, like, fair play. Like, you're putting your time and effort. Like, you put your time and effort in. You record your videos. Like, we talk to people now. Like, you put your time and effort in. So I think I don't mind it, but it's just hard, isn't there? Because so many wrong ones come out. You never know who to trust.
Yeah.
So it's just such a hard balance.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It just gets frustrating sometimes when when fake accounts are like making up rubbish and that sort of thing. So it is a hard balance, but it's a tough one. But one person I've always liked, which is a shame he won't be here this year because Leicester got relegated, but Samuel Martin.
Yeah.
I could always try. I'd always be checking because I've got a big. I love Maddison and Barnes, so I'd own them quite a lot. So I'd always be like checking his sort of tweets. But yeah, it's a tough one. But game week 38, it's always stressful, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many people put stuff out.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. Like, the thing about the game week 38 deadline is, it feels like everything you do, you're going to regret it because there's so many different, plans you have in your idea. You're like, oh, well, I've got to finish the season strong, got to do something different. But then also, it feels like you look through the list of players and you like consider every single option and you think, you're going to regret one of them eventually. And so it's a bit of a frustrating one from my point of view because I think, I don't know if you agree with this, but in terms of the FPL deadline now, there are some, announcements coming out today at 1 because of the prices, being revealed on YouTube and Twitter. But, I thought they might be doing a bit of a announcement based on like rule changes or chips or anything. Would you want to see the FPL deadline get moved back? Because, it's really hard when even it was an hour before and now it's been moved back an hour and a half. If it's a deadline that's when kickoff is done, is that gonna, do you think, solve the problems, or will the problems just get the same or even possibly even worse? Because I don't think you can really ask players to lock in their teams 24 hours before the game because then it's just incredibly tough.
Yeah, like, it's the thing. I don't know why they can't, like, because Sky. I don't know if you've played Sky Fantasy before,
no,
but
briefly, but not really. Yeah.
So you can do it up till the first game starts. And obviously, like, you wouldn't get the news for the games at 3 o'clock or the Sunday games, but I don't see the point in locking it an hour and a half or an hour before. Like, why don't you just do it? Like, get the first team, get the halftime kickoff, and it's like, so obviously they changed the halftime kickoff because BT have to have a certain number of games, all that's the TV sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, do it. Like, you couldn't do it because you get these late embargo tweets from the managers that don't come out. Like, they'll have a press conference at like 3 o'clock, and then these tweets will get released at like 11 o'clock at night. And like for a lot of people that are working or busy, like, or you're just out on a Friday, like, you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh no, like, got to check all this. So it's a tough one. But the problem is the game crashing. And that can't be happening. Like, with the amount of people that, like, if the game's increasing, the game's getting better, they've got to sort that for next season because a lot of people do leave them late because you're looking or you're busy, and it's like, you can't. That's not fair. Like, that's something they do need to work on. And I'm hoping, like, there's a way that they've over this summer, over this period off, they've sort of improved the servers. They can hold up more people because the game's growing. It's massive now. You're looking at 11 million players. Like, it's massive, and it's going to keep growing.
Absolutely,
it will keep growing.
Yeah, no.
So it is a tough one.
I 100% agree with you. The thing about the game is that it's so big now that so many people are aware of it. So the more you kind of have these people playing the game, the more the number of players that are playing, the more likely, I guess, that the servers will crash. And if you've got all these players making transfers 1 minute before deadline, then it's going to lead to chaos. So I think, and as well, like you talked about people, needing the information. That's such a key thing. If you are locking in the team 24 hours before the deadline, you might get a late press conference news that this player is out and this manager's, making this player have to do a fitness test. These things can often be up to the last kind of 24 hours. So I honestly think, 100%. And, I've been burnt in the past with like deadlines. And I remember, I think it was the 2021 season, or actually it might have actually been, last season, 21-22. And I don't know if you experienced it, but I think it was like around game week 17, 18. I think Villa against Burnley was one of the fixtures, and I think it got called off like it's crazy, like 1 or 2 hours before kickoff.
Yeah.
And I was one that, I always am one that loved to transfer in late. But I just remember thinking this one week, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to bring in Watkins. That's my definite transfer. So I did it like 2 hours before kickoff, thinking, oh yeah, I've left it enough time. The game gets called off at like 30 minutes later after I make the transfer, and then I have to basically leave him in my team because I'm not going to just take a hit to then take him out again. I have to leave him in my team as a transfer in who's blanking that week, and it's just like it's crazy when that happens. So after that moment, I've just never ever made early transfers again, and it's scarred me for life now. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's got to be a balance of price. A lot of people look at team value and say, oh, you've got to make the changes before the prices go up. But often, like, that's not massively a factor, especially last season, when so many players were cheap and you had a lot of, money available. It wasn't really a problem. But maybe next season, in 23-24, when these players are going to go up in price, we might be talking about something else there. But, no, very interesting stuff. And, yeah, so it was a good game week 38 for you, really. Game week 38, 66 points, really, nothing to sniff at. And as I say, that captaincy with Kane was, when I thought up the captaincy debate, all week I was on Salah. And the only thing that swayed me was thinking, oh, now Liverpool don't have a Champions League place to fight for. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, hang on, why are Leeds going to be probably relegated? Because they're terrible. So that's the only thing that I had in my mind. And, Kane had actually got a great final day record, so I had that as well. So that was what swayed me, but I could have easily on another day gone Salah. It was again one of those big swings, really. Yeah,
no, and I mean Liverpool drawing 4 goals being scored. I mean Salah only getting 1 assist, so that's just where luck plays out. Kane doing what he does, and Salah only getting an assist when Liverpool get 4 goals.
Yeah,
is mental. I've got a quick question for you actually. Looking on to next season. So obviously Trent was pushing into midfield. Is he going to be a defender or midfield? What are your thoughts? Well, surely he's a defender.
The way I look at it is, from FPL's point of view, for them to make Trent an attractive option, they're going to keep him as a defender because, his FPL potential, which he has every season, he delivers every season, gets at least 200 points, it seems like, is from the fact he, gets the extra point for a goal, gets the clean sheet points. So often if he gets an attack and return, he's usually in the bonus points. Whereas if he was put into a midfield role, it feels like almost he would become a bit of a Lundstrom that season after he got reclassified. It would be like, he's chipping with goals, but he wouldn't really get the same points, ceiling that he has as a defender. So I just don't see why FPL would do that. And I think the same thing goes to John Stones. You look at Stones changing to that midfield role. Obviously he doesn't get as many attack and returns as Trent, but when he gets the odd goal here and there, you think, oh, well, the reason it's good to own him is because he's a defender. But I just don't see him as a midfielder in FPL being that effective, really.
No, same. But if he's a defender, he'll be the first name on my team sheet, I think, next year. Because him in that role, in that new role, is outrageous. Like, I can't wait to watch him play more, especially for England as well, like on international duty, like to see him grow. Because he's a good player. He's just obviously not as good at one-on-one defending at right back. So to push him into midfield, it's exciting times and exciting for FPL. And I think, there could be a few... We spoke about the captaincy on defenders. Maybe he could be a player that we captain next season. We'll have to see.
Maybe. I mean, the thing I always have about City defenders is that Ederson's in goal, and he's just so prone to a late goal being conceded. And I had moments I owned him last season. Luckily for me, it was only one spell because I remember thinking, I'll bring him back in. He's got loads of double game weeks. Glad I didn't go for him because it was more pain around the kind of game week 36 period where he got rested, I think. So, yeah, it was crazy. Even Ederson's not free from Pep's crazy roulette. So, yeah,
no,
unbelievable. Okay, well that's great. Thank you for that. I mean, just looking at your kind of final game week 38 team, it's interesting to see, a lot of things that some people do is like compare their game week 1 to game week 38 team, and you look at some of the players in that side, actually some similarities to my team. So I captained Kane as you did. I also brought in Harvey Barnes on the final week as you did, and that was a really interesting one because I was weighing up like, should I go for a a midfielder that's got something to play for, like one of the Everton or the Leicester midfielders. And I also remember thinking, like, oh, why am I thinking Harvey Barnes? Just go for someone I know is good. But I just thought, one last hurrah. And Barnes actually had a crazy season in the respect that he scored a lot of goals, but he actually never scored bonus points. And it's quite incredible, across the season, they always seem to get more goals from Maddison or, Vardy or Daka or whoever. So, incredible season. But that was a big differential for me on the final day. And great to see that Fernandes haul as well. I mean, Fernandes is one I've got a question for you about really this season, because I felt at no point last season that I needed to own Bruno Fernandes.
No.
Because he's not the same player he was back in that first season he joined. He's not the kind of central figure in their attack. He's not the one that's having the shots. He's more the assister of the assister, and he's creating some stuff. He was one of the players with the most chances created, I think, last season. But do you think that he will go back to his high scoring potential? Because he did score 176 points, which is still a decent return, but he wasn't really it didn't make me want to bring him in. So do you think we'll see a different Fernandes in next season?
It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously this season we saw him push back a little bit into the 2 because Sabitzer when Sabitzer was played, he'd be a bit further forward. Now United have signed Mount, haven't they? And it's like, how's that going to work?
Mason Mount is a really interesting one for sure.
Yeah, this is what I'm interested to see. Like, how is Mount going to affect Fernandes? Because they're obviously both creative players. Mount's been off it lately, but if he can get back up to form, there is a good player there inside of him. So again, I feel like Fernandes won't be, he's got top of them anyway, so I probably wouldn't start with him. Even though I think there could be goals in that game. But he's going to be one to watch for sure, because tail end of the season, he hauled up with a couple of big performances. I think 11-pointer, a 12-pointer, a 10-pointer, something like that. So there was some big pulls, but United are going to be a team to watch. And I mean, they're going to press on with Ten Hag. But I think for me, he'll be a player, not on him straight away, because he'll be expensive again, I'm sure. But we'll watch him, and there will be a time. There will be a Bruno time again, I'm sure.
He's one of those weird players where he won't necessarily be amazing all season, but there will be a little kind of spell of double game weeks and Fernandes is often very successful in double game weeks. And I actually did have a spell, I think it was around game week 22, 23 that I brought him in, and he did quite well. I think got 12 points, something like that. So he can be good in spells. It's whether or not he's back to the Bruno that we had like last season, first season we had him, and he was a bit of a season keeper really. But so just rattling some of the kind of stats from this season from Anupla, just looking at your team. So are you what kind of style manager would you say you are? Are you a risk averse manager? Are you a kind of safe manager? Because obviously when you're playing the game with another manager, you kind of have to manage both your style and Chris's style. So what would you say the kind of combined style really was for the team this season for FPL apprentices?
I think it's been interesting because we spoke about this a lot. So me and Chris are both quite risk takers. Right. I think like in our own teams, in my own team, I took probably quite a few more risks than I did in our team. I think it's hard. Like when there's two managers coming together, you've got your players you remember. So like for me, like my likes of Barnes, Wilson, they're my sort of players. Chris is his players. So you're trying to make a transfer, and instead of there being like two players you could bring in, there's like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because you both come in. But me and Chris are quite good at, coming together. I'm a lot more active than Chris. So Chris sort of got me into FPL. So I knew of it and I played it, but he used to be really, really like active on Twitter, like with the community, that sort of thing. He got me into it, and then I think he got a bit more busy with like uni, with his running, that sort of thing, and he died down a bit more. So this year I've always been the one being like, oh, like I've seen this injury on Twitter, I'd be keeping him up to date. And then he'd be like looking at the team like and sort of being like, all right, maybe we should bring him in. So I bring the information and he'd sort of look at the team. And it's having that balance. But I'd say we definitely are a risk taker, and we love a few little punts on our captaincy. And it just keeps the game fun as well. And I think, as we've seen before, you can be template and do really well, but you've got to make, let's say you go just 4 like decisions across the year. If you have 4 big 50-50s, like Wilson this season, Wilson or Isaac, we halved our rank, and they are the ones that make the decision. So I'd say we are a risk taker, but not to the extent of, is it Luke? What's his Twitter? I think Luke, the one that's been on Black Box a few times. He loves his captaincy, Maverick, and that sort of thing. So we got the balance of it. We love a risk, but not like too over the top.
Not
if that makes
outlandish.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I have a thing where I've always thought that I'm quite a risk averse manager. I think I still generally am, but I do love myself a differential, and across the season, like I didn't do it every week, but I think I did like pretty much 90% of the season. I had this kind of mission to every week to at least have one differential that kind of makes me excited about the game, because I think that is what you play the game for. You have those kind of gains against your friends, that these players that aren't owned, and it was actually incredible. Like by keeping myself to this kind of quite stringent structure of one differential each week, that really helped my rank. And I was really happy with my season. I finished 18.8k. So that kind of thing for me, you start off very template, and then even then I started off with a couple differentials. I had Kyle Walker in the first week. I had Kulusevski for that home Southampton game. Those kind of things, you can sprinkle a bit of differential at the start of the season, but mainly it's template. And then when you get around the kind of business stage of the season, that's when you really go for it. If you've got rank to chase, then you can start bringing in these differentials. But one thing I do have, which every season I just can't seem to escape it, is bench regret. And I see that this stat shows that your total bench points in last season was 341, and if I compare that to my season, it says that I've benched 403, so I'm even worse than you. But 349 is still a lot, so it's tricky, because I think as well there's that balance between having squad depth versus maximising your 11, and versus not knowing whether there'll be postponements, there'll be rotation, or also just focusing on the team you've got and maximising. Because if you have a good squad depth, then it means you can't have as many premiums, right? So it's that commitment, and I always have these great differentials, often the cheap ones as well, which hurts the most, that are sat on my bench and they score big points. Like I had Andreas last season. At times I had players like Nico Williams and Fabian Schär that were just sat on my bench getting points, and it just makes me every season keep thinking to myself, just have bench fodder. And then I'm like, well, no, I need really a bit of squad depth. So I guess it's a balance of the two. You can switch at points in the season, but it's a really interesting one. And yeah, just kind of to finish off on really the stats here, it's interesting to see that your chips were pretty successful. I mean, your highest score 133 from the bench boost, and then 112 from the triple captain, but you didn't score any lower than 54 across all your chips. So that was impressive. I mean, I scored that terrible wild card of 26. I got 37 points. So it just shows consistency can be the key to get such a good rank of top 12k. So fair play to you. So yeah, just kind of comparing that to my season really, and I've got some stats to reel off here. So myself, so you finished a very good rank, 11,550 with a lot of points to finish the season really, with that 2,450 points was how you scored in last season's game. So it's a big jump up this season to get 2,602. So fair play to you. That's a big plus. And I've seen as well, like your previous ranks, some good scores there, like around 300k. And the same goes for Chris really. I mean, he had a really impressive season in 1920, around 15k. So it's great to see, both of you, Tom and Chris, you're both really decent managers. You've been playing for a while, and long may the FPL Apprentices team continue. My team, in comparison, I mean, 2,589 points. So yeah, as I say, you got the victory in the league there, and finishing on an overall rank of 18,795. And I actually, I always think that I'm quite hit. I like a hit if it brings in differentials, because I seem to think like, it will make up the difference, because if they get returns, then I'll be loving it, and the hits kind of cancel out. But actually, I didn't take that many hits this season, minus 36. So just the 9 hits all season, the 9 occasions, so minus 36. So maybe that's the thing I look at going forward, because in previous seasons I've been one that's taken loads of hits. So maybe that's the way to go really. So yeah, just looking at my last kind of couple of weeks, as I mentioned, that final game week 38 was a big one, and I brought in Harry Kane for Haaland, as many people did, and then of course Harvey Barnes. The one I was interested about on game week 38 was David De Gea, because I don't think many people owned him. I mean, there was a few that did. They had that double in 37, I seem to remember. But when that penalty was given to Fulham, I just remember thinking, like, oh my word, the game was only just started and I've already got a clean sheet wipeout. And then when Mitrovic misses that penalty, I'm dancing. I'm absolutely dancing. I don't think De Gea's been one to save many penalties across his career. I mean, I think he did do one against West Ham, I think, a season ago or something. I think Mark Noble might have like missed one, but generally, yeah, he doesn't save penalties. So when that came in for me, I was ecstatic. So yeah, it was a great season. I mean, if you look at my previous ranks, I'm just happy that I'm around this kind of top 20k rank, because I've never been this high. Like my first season was 18-19, so I had a pretty bad season, finishing 3,391. So yeah, basically 3.39 million. So a pretty bad season. In 1920, I was 1.8 million. 2021, I was 267k. And then last 21-22 was 109k. So I just missed out on the top 100k. And to be fair, I did just miss out on the top 10k this season, with 17 points being the difference. But I always looked in the final game week thinking I'm not going to realistically get the top 10k. It was a big gap to bridge, but I'm still happy, like, because I looked at points in the season where I had a very disastrous kind of game week. I think it was game week 34, game week 35, where I brought in like Isak and I brought in Salah, and there was that week that Kane got a good points haul against Man United, and Isak was robbed of an assist against Everton, and I was absolutely fuming. That was one of those ones. But considering where I was, thinking, I might just about get a top 20k, even a top 30k to finish there. I was absolutely loving it. So so really it's an interesting season. What would you say is the kind of highlight of your season, though? What was the one moment that you looked at and thought, that's really the one that gives me the most joy?
It's got to be that Wilson captaincy.
Would you say, yeah?
I know it's late on in the season, but just my love with Wilson, just what I watched both games, like, I think it's got to be that, and just the way it changed the whole rank as well. I had him captain in my own team. We had him captain the joint team. I think Chris had him captain in his team, like three-way, and we were just like celebrating, like messaging each other, going mental. And it's like, that is so late on in the season, like to have something like that happen, especially for it to be Wilson. Like, that's got to be the best thing by far, for sure.
That's fantastic. Yeah, for me as well. Like, I think it's tough, but I think it's between two. It's probably between the Rashford triple captain, because I went into it thinking, like, Leeds and Palace, those are good fixtures, but I never thought he would score in both games. And I remember that second game, I think it was the Leeds one, where for so long United just weren't at it at all, and then Rashford just kind of came out of nowhere, scored a header and got them back in it. And I just think that's just brilliant to see, and Rashford just kind of back in form, back in style. And who would you say was your FPL player of the season? Because I think a lot of people will say Haaland, obviously, but it's a bit boring, isn't it? Because everyone's going to say that. So was there one that kind of, for your team, was just the best player, and you feel like you owned him in the most positive way, really?
Well, so this is interesting. I was thinking about this. So I'll just quickly mention my own team quickly. I owned Harry Kane in 37 out of 38 game weeks.
Wow.
In my own team. And obviously, like, there's the Tottenham bias, but he wasn't far off Haaland in terms of points at all.
It's incredible.
And, like, for me, like, looking on Twitter, people are like, like Salah or Haaland, this and that. And that was, I think I finished top 44k in my own team or something like that. And Kane was massive. And he's someone, like, obviously I love Kane, and he chipped along with his 7. He was so consistent, not scoring many, but getting, I think he scored in, was it like 28 different games?
Yeah, it was something like that. I think it was something like, he only blanked in about 8 or 9 games across the whole season. It's incredible.
So I think, in terms of, we had Kane in our team quite a bit as well, but I think the stand-up man, like, is Kane, because he's a big player, but he's never owned, like, this season, his ownership was never that high.
Yeah.
Apart from maybe the last day of the season, but like, to have him the whole way through, and in a poor Tottenham team, like a Tottenham team that didn't get Europe, and for him to score the goals he did, like
yeah, no, I think I
mental.
agree with you. Like Kane for me was my FPL team player of the season, just because the times I owned him, he was just so reliable for me. And I remember when he was still quite lowly owned, I think he had Palace away, and it was like a midweek game, and he got 2 goals. And those moments where you're like, this guy is just an elite goal scorer, and yet he's owned not that highly. And then obviously everyone flocked to bring him in, but it was amazing. So yeah, so that's kind of the highlights. I've got to kind of finish off though. We've got to kind of see both sides of the dice. What was your worst moment of the season? What was the season that you just thought, FPL, just leave it out. Like I just want to go home, basically, because there's often those moments.
Yeah, so there's one that comes to mind, and it's cost us top 10k really, and it's hard. Like it's not like one you think, but so in game week 26 we were set on bringing in Brennan Johnson. He got 13 points, but I don't know why. I don't know if it was me or Chris, but we ended up just going with Iheanacho, got 2 points. And it was an 11-point swing. And you look, and in like the long run, you wouldn't think too much of it. But when you look how close you were to the top 10k, and you're like, and we literally had like the messages, and we went back the next day, we're like, oh my word. And at the time, we were like, we didn't realise how costly that would be.
Yeah.
But those 11 points would have shot, and at the end of the day, like 11.5k overall is insane. But to say you'd finish in the top 10k would have been like amazing, like would have been unreal. Yeah. And when me and Chris talk now, it still comes to our mind every time. We're like, oh, Brennan Johnson, like, and it was one of those like nice little punts, and I don't know what stopped us from doing it, but yeah, I think that was the moment that's like, oh, and it sticks with you, and that's the moment that in a great season, that's the moment that you sort of remember, and it's like, oh, and it's so annoying.
It can be painful for sure. Yeah, no, for my worst moment of the season, it's also another painful one. I was talking earlier about bench regret, and it was, if we set the scene, Brighton were conceding goal after goal after goal, and we were like, oh, maybe now they're rotating, we should not go all in on Brighton. But I still had the triple up of Matoma, McAllister, Estupiñán, and I just remember that I'd brought in, I think I'd just brought in, the week before they had Leeds at home, Manchester City, and I brought in Alvarez. And I just remember thinking, oh yeah, this is going to be a great differential. Alvarez blanks against Leeds, and I was like, okay, bit annoying. But then Mahrez was my other differential, and he did really well. And then they had the Everton game, and the Everton game was one where I thought, you've got to go for this, because Everton were defensively all over the place. They were back in the relegation battle. And then Brighton, their fixtures were pretty tough in that double game week. They had Arsenal and Newcastle. Yeah. And I was like, I've got to think about this. Play the fixtures. I never have, I don't think ever in my FPL career before this point, unless they were maybe injured, I've never benched a double game week player. But I was like, the chance of a clean sheet in those 2 games, it's got to be low. So I bench Estupiñán, and he scores that goal against Arsenal. And honestly, it's probably the biggest pain I've ever been in my FPL career, because I just knew that it felt like everyone, maybe only it was a small amount really on Twitter, but it felt like everyone started him. And it was particularly helped by the Rashford news, because people thought, oh, I'll start Rashford just in case. If not, I'll get Estupiñán off my bench. And some people did that. And I was always confident that Rashford wouldn't play. So for that reason, I benched Rashford in that week. Yeah. So it meant that I was never going to get Estupiñán off the bench. And it was so frustrating that I put so much faith in that triple City away to Everton, because, of course, Alvarez blanked. And then I've got Estupiñán sat on the bench, 17 points, never going to come off. So, yeah, that's probably my most painful. I mean, there's been other ones like bringing in Tarkowski for that double for getting 0 points. There was quite a few of them. And you can look back on my channel, on my playlist. I mean, I did do less content this season on my channel just because of, like you said, uni. I was just a bit more busy. But I hope this kind of video has kind of summed it all up in one. And thank you so much, apprentices. And great, Tom, to get your views on your season and really, on behalf of Chris, like, just well done for everything you're doing. Like, apprentices, really great to see your content on Instagram and Spotify as well. So thanks for joining me, mate.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed it, and it's really got me in the mood now for the FPL reveal later. Like, I was part of like, oh, is it too early? But now doing this video of you chatting, looking back on the season, like, I can't wait. So keep up the good work on your channel and on the
mate.
Instagram. I'm always looking on the Twitter and Instagram at your league and at the posts and thinking, can I catch in my own team this season? I kept thinking, can I catch him? I didn't catch you, but yeah, no, it's been a great fun. I've really enjoyed this. So yeah, cheers for having me on.
No worries, mate. Like I said, appreciate coming on. And yeah, if you do want to join the FPL Yellow Army's Loyal Legion Mini League, then if you joined last season, you can just, when the new game launches, you can just click Renew Leagues, and you should be able to just join again. But if you haven't joined, then I will, of course, have a post coming out with the league code when the game launches. I mean, the prizes are coming out today. I mean, there might be more on Tuesday and Wednesday, so maybe the game launches around Wednesday, maybe even Thursday. But whenever the game launches, I'll have the code out. Don't you worry. So yeah, that's great. Just to finish off, have you got any more shout outs you'd like to do, Tom, or is that everything?
No, I think that's good. To be fair, like again, just keep your eye on Roberto's Instagram. I'm sure everyone will know yours if they listen to you. But one thing's for sure, I'm going to talk to Chris. We're going to try and get the first, second, and third spot next season with all our teams.
I like it.
It's a challenge. I mean, even retaining first base is a challenge with the teams in there. But I'm going to be proper on it and keep an eye on it. And I'll be looking out for your Twitter posts each week to see if I'm in the top 10.
I like the confidence. I like it. Yeah, no. Feel free to go follow the guys on FPL Apprentices Spotify, and as well, just to link back to what we said earlier, you know, if you're interested in football, if you're interested in FPL content, then feel free. It's coming in September. The podcast that I'll be doing with my mate Chris is called the Form is Temporary podcast. So basically, we tried to think of like a name that was linked to both general football and FPL, and that's what stuck really. So yeah, the trailer's been released for that. So it's like a 20-second clip of just talking about what we will be doing, and yeah, it's starting up in September. So yeah, feel free to get ready for that, and hope you have a good good start to the next season, Tom, and hopefully you're having another good season.
Yeah, cheers.
Awesome.
Looking forward to listening to that podcast. Good stuff.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it. All right, I'll just end the recording now.